And record. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Double Digit Hockey Show. I am your host, John Easthope, and I thank you for joining me here today. Of course, we are here on astvproductions.com each and every Thursday, so I appreciate you carving out some time for me today. I got an awesome guest lined up today. She is a daily podcaster. She knows her stuff. One of the few females that I've been able to get on my show, so I'm excited about that part of things. Jess from Locked On Flames joins me. Jess, how are you today?
Good. Thanks so much for having me. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I appreciate you carving out some time for me today. How is life out? You're out in the East somewhere. Whereabouts are you, and how are things going out there for you guys?
Yeah, so I am in upstate New York, about 25 minutes from Quebec. Things are looking good. It's nice summer. Can't complain. I'll take it. It's not snowing, so.
That's what I tell people that complain about the heat. I'm like, I don't have to shovel the heat. I'm okay with this.
Exactly.
Awesome. So I got to ask, you Locked On Flames, but yet you're in upstate New York. How did that come about?
Okay. So I'm originally from Boston, but I moved to Plattsburgh a year and a half ago now, which is crazy. And one night I tweeted out and was like, I would love to host a Locked On hockey podcast. I didn't even tweet at them. I just tweeted it. And I think somebody sent the tweet to one of the people at Locked On, and I got a DM and they were like, hey, we have an opening, either the Blue Jackets or the Flames. What do you think? And I was like, well, the Flames have cool jerseys, so okay. And obviously Johnny Gaudreau being Boston College alum, and Milan Lucic and things like that. So I was like, okay, seems like an easy decision. I knew nothing about the team, nothing, but they've been a fun team to cover, and I love the fan base. It's great.
That's awesome. That's actually really awesome. I did a similar thing on Twitter. I covered a Twitter account for a team I didn't even know anything about. Happened to be the Islanders at that point. It's not easy to do. So credit on you for not being around the team, but still being able to have a really good content.
Thank you.
Why podcasting? And you're also a big sports writer. So what drove you to the sports media side of things?
So growing up, I was always writing. I had notebooks upon notebooks, and it was more creative writing than anything. And I, grew up in Boston. So just being a spoiled Boston fan, I loved sports. And finally one day, some older woman that I worked with was like, you need to combine your two passions. There's no excuse for you not to do this. So I did it. And then it just kind of started from there. Honestly, it's so embarrassing, but I knew hockey. I was fairly confident in my knowledge of hockey, but I was fact checking my language, the lingo, everything with Hockey for Dummies. And, now I'm here. So it's interesting to see the path that it's taken.
That is awesome. So before we get into the conversation, I've got to ask your things here. You're a Boston area person. I've seen you tweet out about the Red Sox, so I've got to ask, how do you feel about your Red Sox this year?
Prior to this series against the Blue Jays, I think that they're a much better team overall than they were last year and even the year before that. But they're a playoff team. They still gotta iron out some kinks and whatnot, but I think it could be done.
Hey, I'm not against that either. I'm not a Toronto Blue Jays fan myself. I am a Canadian, yes. My team is the Kansas City Royals, and we're in a very similar boat where we're batting above our expectations. So I'm enjoying the baseball season myself. So Let's start off with the hockey conversation, what we just saw. You're from Boston. That's the team you cheer for on Twitter. I see it all the time as well. You got your Bruins shirts on. I'll ask the hard question to start. What happened to the Bruins?
Honestly, I'm just happy that they made it past the Capitals. I think that there were a lot of questions going into the playoffs because they were without a solid blue line. They didn't have that depth at defense that they used to have when they had players like Chara or Torrey Krug, Kevin Miller, basically just a liability. And it stinks because he is a good defenseman, but when you are chronically injured and, just have bad luck out on the ice, not reliable. Goaltending, people love to throw gas on this fire as if Tuukka Rask is just some horrendous goaltending. And I just wish people would take 5 seconds and watch another game and watch actual bad goaltending. But I guess that, Rask was dealing with a torn labrum, and obviously you got to move your hips and stuff to move and protect the goals. So he was struggling with that. And just, I think that there were some issues offensively, obviously, as well. I don't know. I just think it was kind of a blessing that they even made it as far as they did.
Spoken like a true Boston fan. When you can get past Washington or New York, you guys are very excited about that kind of thing. So that's awesome. You talked about the defense there. There's one guy that I don't think got enough love in the National Hockey League this year, and he didn't get a Norris final candidacy, but he was on my ballot if I had one, and that's Mr. McAvoy. What did you make of Charlie's season?
This was by far the best season he has had in his career. Obviously, he's still young, but he has had the chance to grow under Zdeno Chara, which was fantastic. Coming out of Boston University, he's huge. And there are adjustments that need to be made, obviously. So he has that top defenseman paired with him, but he... For a guy that went 52 games without a goal last year, and I know defenseman metrics obviously are a lot different than forwards, but he had a fantastic season. He worked with the cards he was dealt, and I thought it was great.
The loss of the Zdeno Chara was a big one for Charlie McAvoy, but he certainly stepped up his game. Another defenseman I want to talk about there, I'm not going to call him the next Zdeno Chara, but a guy who can fill a lot of those holes. Brendan Carlo doesn't get enough love for me around the National Hockey League, and a guy not talked about enough. What did you see from Carlo before he unfortunately got injured in the playoffs? I
am so happy with the strides that he has taken in his career because he missed his first 2 career playoffs due to injury, and it was unfortunate. And then 2019, he makes the playoffs, and they make a run for the cup. They lose, but he was so vital to have on that blue line, still is. I think that pairing him with Torrey Krug was so good for his development, and it's just so funny because Carlo's so tall in comparison. So it's just just 2 mismatched guys, but they worked so well together. And to see Carlo just, really protect the puck in the way that he did, I thought was just light years beyond where he was, say, 2 seasons ago.
Brendan Carlo, for me, is not a guy that popped up on my radar right away. Now, I've known him for a few years. I'm a big Western Hockey League guy over here. He was tremendous for the Tri-City Americans when he played in the Western Hockey League. It's really good to see a guy like that find success at the next level. Who else on that blue line for you, Jess, took a step forward and became a bigger piece for the Boston Bruins this year?
I would say Jakub Zaboral. He is... I think 24, and has just kind of bounced between Providence with the AHL team, and then, when somebody goes down in the club, he gets called up, and he's just never found that spot. And I think that he had some luck this year. I think that he didn't look scared. He didn't look like a deer in the headlights whenever he was out on the ice. And that's huge, because every shift before this season was just, it was like throwing me out there. Like, I would be terrified. So he's just, I think that there's definitely some room to grow there, and I'm looking forward to it. But I do hope that this offseason they kind of get another veteran presence in there.
I'm going to have you look at your crystal ball a little bit on this next one. The goaltending conversation for Boston was really easy the last couple of years. It was Rask, Halak, great backup, and they worked really well together and found good success for Boston. Now the offseason comes, Rask no longer on contract, not sure what to do with Halak, and you got two great young kids. How are you looking at the goaltending picture for Boston going into next year?
I think, oh my God, I really want to say that Rask comes back for the next year or two, and, maybe he takes a little less money. And he's at the point in his career, he's a dad, he's older, he's not even that old, but in hockey terms, he is. And, he says that the only team he wants to play for is Boston. So, what? If I hope that's the case, because I would not throw Jeremy Swayman to the Wolves just yet, because we've seen what's happened with Carter Hart, and we don't want that.
Yes. Fair. That's a fair comparison. I always love the conversation around old hockey players, because at this time they're now all younger than I am, and so it makes me feel a little bit old too. I just turned 37 myself, and they're talking about this 33, 34-year-old goaltender being old, and I'm like, wait a minute, we're not there yet.
Right, like, it's so funny, because like I'm turning 26 this year, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of like I would be in like getting like my prime contract if I was a hockey player, and it's just like, no, I'm not old yet.
Yeah, no, it's crazy how you get older and how you think of different things like that. Speaking of getting old, there is a couple of guys on that forward group that are getting older. You have Tuukka Rask. They've been a big part of that core with Bergeron and Marchand. Are we looking at the last kick of the can next year for this core group, or is it time in your eyes for Boston to maybe hit that reset button?
I have been saying this since 2019 that, and I've been wrong every time, that, this is it. Like, David Krejci's up on his contract as well. And he said that he's not really like even thinking about the future. I mean, I don't blame him, but I would say that if they re-sign Hall and get Krejci, then this will be the final year, or I guess next season will be the final year, because they're hockey old. They're older guys. They've all won a cup with the team, and that's already been 10 years. So there's no way that they can extend that. I think that they do have a lot of work to do with that younger forward group, but in terms of that core, next season is probably it.
Fair enough. Okay, this is kind of a two-parter question. A couple of guys involved here. The name Jake DeBrusk seems to be out there. So is he being moved by Boston seems to be the question. And can they get Taylor Hall back under contract?
Yes, to Taylor Hall. I think that that's going to be kind of like a no-brainer situation there. I think that hopefully it'll be a situation where it doesn't cost $10 million for one forward. That would be ideal. In terms of Jake DeBrusk, there has always been this weird connection to Calgary, and I don't understand why. Like, I know that his dad, obviously, the Oilers and things like that, but like, people are like, oh yeah, like they're gonna move him and bring Noah Hannafin. I'm like, you guys need to like slow down for like 5 seconds. No, but I do think that they traded Anders Bjork, who came up at the same time as DeBrusk. DeBrusk saw a lot more success with Boston, and I think that they kind of gave him his contract 2 years ago or last year, whatever it was. It's team friendly, it's trade friendly. I think that it's a bargain if, he does get moved and finds success elsewhere. I think that they need to move him. And I hate admitting that because I've loved watching him grow and develop in the system and things like that. But he's one of those players that, you kind of saw an expiration date with. Your time's up. You gotta go find a new home somewhere else. And I think that this is probably the off season where it gets done.
A lot of people think that Boston, you look at Boston like, oh, they're not going to do much. They're not going to do it. And then you dive into like we have here and you think, wait a minute, there's some work to be done in Boston. That's going to be a fascinating offseason coming out of Boston for the Bruins. Let's move on a little bit here. Being a Bruins fan, you got to watch probably, I don't know how you guys view it out there, but I found a very intriguing matchup. Let's go all the way back to round one. And I want to know your thoughts from a Boston standpoint on the Toronto-Montreal series and what you thought of that and what you saw from that series.
I don't know what happened there. I think that obviously losing John Tavares was very detrimental and unfortunate. It stunk, but I am left scratching my head with how little production the superstars of the Toronto Maple Leafs had. And, I think that people were so confident because they finally had that missing piece. They had the goaltending. And that seemed to be the piece that fell apart every postseason. And then that wasn't the case. Jack Campbell stood on his head. And then you look at the other end of the ice and you have Carey Price like it's, 2012, 2013 out there. And he just looks so good, looks so fantastic. And Montreal just said no, that, it's our time. And I'm excited. I was happy. I didn't see myself rooting for Montreal, but I was like, anyone but Toronto.
I'm very impartial in that series, and I wanted to see how it was viewed in the eyes of someone who actually had a stake in the game. Both huge rivals of the Boston Bruins. So now Montreal's moved on. They swept the Jets. They now play the Golden Knights. That series starts right away here. What are you seeing from Montreal, and why are they being so successful in these playoffs for you?
I don't know. I do think that the North Division was considerably weaker than the rest of the hockey league. And that's not necessarily a dig at Canada because, that was a good, we both watched the seasons. I think it was pretty good hockey being played. But when you move outside of those 7 teams, there's obviously a bigger sample size there. And going up against Vegas, I don't know how to feel about it because I don't want to underestimate them, but I also don't want to pump their tires so much because, you do have Marc-Andre Fleury out there. You do have these fantastic players. Just, there's a reason they've made the playoffs and made a pretty deep run every year for the last 4 years. And
I was having this. Yeah, go ahead.
I just hope both teams have fun. That's all.
I was having this conversation with somebody else on a different show here about how this series, Vegas and Montreal, is a series virtually with no centerman. It's weird how these teams are built. There's not a big superstar center among the teams, but they've got good young players. How are you seeing this series shaping up? Is it just going to be a battle of the goaltenders? Is Vegas too strong for you, or does Montreal find a way?
I think that it's more than likely going to be the goaltending, but Montreal just has this way of reading teams and their weaknesses. going into the series against Winnipeg, I was nervous for them. I said, you're going up against Connor Hellebuck. There's a reason he won the Vezina last year, and he just fell flat on his face. Now, I don't expect that to be the situation here in Vegas, but it's certainly going to be a situation where Montreal needs to really find any weakness that they can and just punch a hole right through it and go in to whatever, whether it be the penalty kill, power play, whatever, front of the net presence. Whatever they're doing in these last two series, they did it right. So hopefully that carries over into this one.
A lot of people are giving this goaltending matchup to Montreal, but I'm saying not so fast. Is there a edge one way or another for you?
No. I mean, I think that it's so hard because they're both good teams. And like when I think of Vegas, I just think of how skilled they are in all areas. So I don't think that I can like pick a distinct winner there.
Well, I'm going to ask for your predictions. Who do you got in this series, and how long you think?
Oh man, I'm going to say
I go
Vegas in 6.
We have the same predictions, so we'll all great on that. Let's move to the other series. I was kind of interested where you're sitting. You're in northern New York State. There, the Islanders, have they become a big state, or are they still just a New York story?
It's definitely a southern New York thing. Everybody here has their Canadiens flag flying, and I remember last year when the Islanders obviously were playing in the bubble, and it was the Eastern Conference Finals, and some guy was at the grocery store decked out in his Islanders jersey, his Islanders hat, socks, like orange and blue shoes. Like he must have been from downstate because nobody here roots for the Islanders.
Okay. Hey, Jess, I'm just going to pause this for a second.
Yeah.
I'm going to reload right here. I'm getting a big lag.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Why are you kicking me out? All right. Hopefully that's better here.
Yes.
Crazy technology. All right. Just got to write down the time here and edit this way. All right. All right. Awesome. So you're talking about the New York Islanders there and the fan there. So I'll jump right back into the series here. We saw game 1, Isles, Tampa Bay. We saw the Islanders come out and they look really good. Are they a team of destiny? Are they going to be able to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, or do you think Tampa Bay is too good?
Oh, I hope that they beat Tampa, and I think that they will. I mean, based on what we saw in game 1, the fact that they were limiting Tampa's chances on the power play was fantastic. I thought that it was really good. I can't say clean hockey from the Islanders, but it was some of their better hockey that they've played recently. Tampa was still taking unnecessary penalties, which, I mean, it's Tampa. But the reason that they can get away with it is because they're good. Tampa's a good team. And, you see the team like the Capitals taking penalties like that. And then, their penalty kill falls flat. And, obviously the other team ends up scoring. But Tampa is just such an overall good team that they can do anything.
The Islanders don't play what would consider the prettiest hockey, but it seems to be effective for the players and the personnel that they have. Does Barry Trotz get enough credit in your eyes for the way he goes about his business and makes this, I don't want to call them misfit team, but he makes them work? Does he get enough credit in your eyes?
I think that he doesn't. And I think that a lot of people were kind of, I don't want to say like selling it short, but the Islanders, like, they haven't made it to the Cup final, but they have, had really great runs in the playoffs. So I think that now he's going to have to be in consideration for one of the best coaches in the NHL. And it's time for people to start respecting him. That's
back-to-back conference championship appearances for Barry Trotz and the New York Islanders. I'm going to make you pick on this one too. Do you have the Islanders winning this series, or are you on the side of Tampa Bay?
I'm going to go with the Islanders just because I think that they're going to be able to do what I hope Montreal does and just expose the weaknesses of Tampa Bay.
I saw a great tweet the other day where it says the best thing for hockey would be Montreal, New York, Stanley Cup. Do you agree with that, or would you prefer to see the Vegas, Tampa Bay?
Give me New York and Montreal. Any day. I'll take it.
Perfect. I love it. That would be some grind out old school 90-ish type hockey there.
Yep.
I'm all for it myself. I'd love it. Let's talk a little bit about another news story that just came out today, right before we recorded this. There's a new coach in New York for the Rangers. Gerard Gallant gets the job. Your thoughts on Gerard Gallant and the fit there in New York?
I think that a lot of teams are really kicking themselves right now. And I mean, obviously, he should have been scooped up last year. I've said this for months, and I do think that Calgary should have interviewed him, and Jeff Ward shouldn't have been the only interview there. But, the Rangers really, lucked out, and I think it'll be an interesting fit. It seems that he does have luck with the youth. I mean, I don't want to say just the youth, but I mean, most recently in Worlds, he did such a great job coaching that team that he put together. And I think it's just really it's going to be good for them. I think that they need somebody who can just come down and, actually coach effectively, because that was not happening with David Quinn.
He's not the only coach either. The other team that you could have had a podcast for, they hired a new coach as well. They went in-house with Larson. What do you make of the move there by the Columbus Blue Jackets?
Honestly, don't really know who he is, but I hope that Columbus gets their stuff sorted out and hopefully can come back and be a competitor, because I think that at one point they did have a really good team, and it's just a shame to see the rumors flying around the locker room and all this stuff. So hopefully everything falls into place for them.
Columbus is facing another interesting decision. You mentioned the locker room there. Seth Jones saying he's not going to re-sign. He's going to test free agency. How do you see this unfolding in your eyes, and is there a potential fit out there that jumps out at you?
I think that I'm on the same page as everybody else here. Somebody is going to overpay for him. Mm-hmm. And I don't know who. I hope it's neither team that I'm interested in, but I don't really know what to make of it, because he is a good defenseman, but I don't think that he is going to be making the kind of money that he's thinking he's going to be making.
It's very interesting that a guy calls his shot this early being a free agency. I'm interested to see how that unfurls. I wonder if I look at those teams that have lots of prospects of who can make a move there. Mm-hmm. Looking at Los Angeles would be a potential fit for me there. Interesting. Wanted to get your thoughts on that. Okay. You cover the Flames. I'm in Flames land over here. I'm a fan of the team. So let's dive into a few of those topics and conversations. Let's start on the bench, since we're on the coach conversation here. Kirk Muller's added to the bench. K.O. McLean comes up from Stockton. What do you make of the moves behind the bench for the Flames?
They are finally cleaning out Bill Peters' coaching staff. And I think that this is a move that needs to be done. While there are moves that need to be made on ice, there's also things that are not working off the ice. And coaching and management and that front office stuff that is above my pay grade I think that there needs to be some adjustments there, and it's probably good that they start with stuff behind the bench.
You being in Boston, I've watched a lot of Montreal Canadiens games, so you've seen the work of Kirk Muller. Do you like what he's brought to the power play in Montreal? Do you like the work that you've seen from him? And how does you see that fitting in Calgary?
I think that one of my biggest gripes with the Flames is their special teams. So having him come in and just, really hopefully shift what they're working with now and, maybe test out new things, experiment, trial and error sort of deal. I wouldn't hate to see that. I would absolutely love for somebody to come in and take a risk and not necessarily, throw a bunch of, just pieces that wouldn't work together out there, but, somebody that, throw Mangiapane out there, maybe take somebody off the power play, figure something out, because something needs to be done because it's not working.
Let's focus on K.O. McLean a little bit here. He coached a couple years in Stockton with Ryan Huska before Huska got promoted. Then he had a couple years as the head coach there before he got promoted. He knows these young kids. Does that benefit the team? Does that benefit K.O.? Does that benefit those players? That familiar voice there with them?
Yes. I think that they need somebody who can, I don't want to say relate to the youth, but, can get through to them and not just have them stapled to the bench and not just have them, collecting dust up in the press box. They need to be out there. They need to be logging time on ice. They need experience, because before you know it, people are going to say, I'm out of here. I don't want to play here. And they need to be working within their system a little bit more than just pulling in these outside pieces.
I'm glad you worded it that way. It leads me nicely into my next question. There's a guy on the Flames who played for McLean, and McLean played the crap out of him. He didn't play as much under Sutter, and these lofty expectations into this season. Juuso Välimäki, great young defenseman. How does this move benefit, and how do you see this year playing out?
I really hope that Välimäki has another good year. I think that there's obviously room to improve and things like that, but he needs I think that all these young guys, they need somebody who can come in and say, I see your potential. This is I saw what you could do in Stockton. I see what you're doing here. What if we tweak it a little bit, or, keep doing what you're doing, but we're going to, change this, your D pairing. We're going to change, we're going to figure something out so that it works. And we're not going to keep doing things that fail. And I think that it could really work out well for them.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. This one I'm just going to get out of the way on. I'm just going to give you a couple of words here, and I'm just going to let you run with it. Tell us about Andrew Mangiapane.
One of my favorite NHL players. I think that he is absolutely going to blossom into a superstar, and he is going to be the second best 88 in the league behind David Pastrnak.
Had to throw the Boston stuff in there, did you? I had.
Of course. Of course.
I love it. I absolutely love the conversation with Andrew Mangiapane. He introduced himself to the world for when he played for Team Canada. We in Calgary knew about him before that, and I'm glad that he's getting that recognition from around the league is now, and the respect that he's starting to garner. He took off this year. Another guy that we thought would take off that hasn't quite taken off to that extent was Dylan Dube. What did you make of Dylan's season, and what does he need to do for you this season to get to that next level?
I think, for him, he had 11 goals. Yeah, 11 goals this season, which was a career high. He's still young.
Mm-hmm.
I know his injury came towards the end of the season with his concussion that kept him out of Worlds, which is unfortunate, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that this year or this next season, he can come in well-rested, healthy, and just in a mindset where it's not about, they just need consistency. My biggest gripe with this team is inconsistency, and it's not even just them. I think that a lot of it comes from the management and coaching, but they need to know where they're playing. Obviously some guys can move around, float around, but I think Dube needs to find some stability with line mates and things like that, and hopefully he does find that. I think that would benefit him really well, and I want to see him shooting the puck more.
Mm-hmm. That's a fair way to shoot that puck. Okay, we're going to have the hard conversation here. We're going to have the outside view, and I've been in the bubble here a little bit with this next player. Johnny Gaudreau is an imposing player. Johnny Gaudreau, that conversation, it really can hit you in the face here. If you are given the GM reins and you are given the task to deal with Johnny Gaudreau, are you trading him? Are you signing him to that extension? Or are you just going to let it ride and see what happens?
He gets that extension. He gets it. I don't think that you go and trade him. He is not the piece that should be looked at to move. And honestly, I know that him and Sean Monahan are buddies, but a fully healthy Sean Monahan goes before Gaudreau. And I think that needed to potentially happen last season, but with all of the COVID restrictions, quarantining, and all that stuff, like it couldn't get done, which is fine. But now it puts the Flames in a position where, but Gaudreau is like, there's just this narrative around him. Oh, he doesn't want to be here. He wants to go back east. And then he gives that, his end of the season press conference, and he's like, I love Calgary. I'd stay here, if management wants to work something out. And people run with that and say, oh no, he's just saying that he doesn't want to be here. And it's like, what do you need? What more proof do you need than for him to say he needs to be here? But
that's why I asked the question. That conversation can go a lot of different ends, and there's a lot of people saying the same thing, that he doesn't want to be here. I'm on your side, Jess. I try to give him that extension as well. I try to keep him here, and I build a forward group around him and Matthew Tkachuk.
Yes.
The question, though, is there needs to be moves. So what move do you make, and who do you bring in? Those are the questions being asked right now. For you, what is the biggest need for Flames this offseason?
They need another forward, and they need a top 6 forward, preferably top 6. I think that is just without a doubt number one. I don't know what they do. I don't know if they trade anyone. There's been a lot of trade talks around Matthew Tkachuk because they're like, oh, let's get Jack Eichel. No, you don't need Jack Eichel. Really, any team could benefit from Jack Eichel, but like he's not, like, you don't desperately need him. I don't think, do you go out and trade for Mitch Marner? I don't know. Do you do something crazy? Just move Johnny up to the top line, and we'll go from there.
I love it. Bring me some chaos. Maybe a little chaos would be nice around this Flames team. It's an interesting conversation. Yeah, very interesting conversation around the Flames with who stays, who goes, and then people are looking at who's coming up. For you, who is the best bet in the prospect column team?
I don't know a lot about the prospects, but I do have hope in this younger group that is coming up. I think that, okay, can you get off of my, thanks. Sorry, my cat. But
love it.
I do.
Love it.
I think that regardless of like who the next man up is or anything like that, they need Daryl Sutter to just utilize the players properly. That's it.
I love that statement you just said, next man up, and the next man up, it needs to be that player. I love it. The draft lottery blessed the Flames with the 12th overall pick, except for that pick at all? Or are you more excited in the fact that Seattle is coming into the league and they get pick number 2?
This draft class, normally I'd be very excited, but a lot of these players haven't played in over a year. We haven't seen them play. There hasn't been, a lot of scouting done because of COVID and things like that. So I feel like there might be some inaccuracies or understatements, whatever it may be, and good for Seattle. Just have fun. Do your thing.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Jess, this has been fun. I appreciate the honesty, and I appreciate you carving out some time for me today on the show. Thank you so much for joining me, and hope you have yourself a good rest of your evening.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Jess. Have yourself a good one.
You too.
That was Jess from Locked On Flames joining me on the show here. Her insights, follow her. I will know that you will get her social media when I bring the show out. Appreciate all of the insights there. Playoffs are ongoing still. Vegas, Montreal, they kick off their series. The Isles, I almost said Toronto there for some reason. The Isles already underway against the Tampa Bay Lightning. By the time the show airs, when we're recording it, will be a couple of games into both of those series. Very interested to see who makes the Stanley Cup final there. My predictions, if you missed it during the course of the show here, I do have Vegas in 6. I also have Tampa Bay in 6. That one's looking a little rough here after the first game, but excited to have those playoffs come down. So Jess, Locked On Flames, really appreciate her joining me on the show. Very awesome insight there. I wanted to get her take on things. Being a Boston fan, and she's in Upper New York, she stated there, she has a little bit of a different outlook on some of the things that we were watching as Canadians in the Canadian markets, watching this Northern Division. And so I wanted to get those aspects on the show. I appreciate her doing that. Coming up next week on the show, not sure yet, but it's planning to be another good one. Got some guests lined up. And we'll see where it goes next week there. We'll talk more about the hockey playoffs next year and some more expansion draft and NHL draft talk coming your way. Thank you for carving out a part of your Thursday to be with me on the show today. I appreciate it. Again, find me at VintageJohnny84 on social media. And don't forget to follow ASTV Productions as well on social media platforms for more awesome amateur sports and news and all of your coverage of other things around not just hockey, but around sporting worlds. Appreciate your time today. This has been another edition of the Double Digit Hockey Show here on ASTV Productions. We'll see you guys next Thursday.